Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. Greetings, drowsy spirit. Tonight, I will tell you a story that will help you fall asleep soundly. Remember to subscribe for more bedtime stories and like the video before we start. Tell me where you are in the comments, observing from, and the time. I would also love to know what story you would want to hear next. I assumed I would only be visiting Walmart. That's all. Just a straightforward journey following a demanding day. Sandwich bread, milk, cereal, and perhaps eggs if they weren't too expensive. But 4 weeks, the events that transpired inside that store and right after we left would linger in my mind at night. The asphalt was already mushy, and it was June, the type of June that occurs in Mesa, Arizona. By noon, beneath your sneakers. By 5 p.m., it seemed as though the sun had a personal grudge. My son, who is 9 years old, Liam, had spent the entire day at home. I was juggling remote work and parenting with the onset of summer break. I had spent that afternoon bouncing between folding laundry, making Zoom calls, and attempting to determine why the payment for summer camp still hadn't cleared. I had to stock the refrigerator and get my mind straight. I snatched up my keys and said, "Liam, put on your shoes. We are making a brief trip to Walmart." Already sporting those battered Spider-Man sneakers, he jogged out of his room. "Can I check the NER file?" I answered, taking my wallet. "You can look. However, we're not making any purchases today." "Deal." He smiled. "Deal." The large Walmart off Southern Avenue was our neighborhood store, the kind where the air conditioner always feels a little faulty and there are never enough carts. However, it has everything and is close. At approximately 5:15 p.m., we pulled into the parking lot. Like flash bulbs, the sun glares off windshields. There was the usual jumble of bustle and noise inside. Toddlers sobbing, carts squeaking, and the strange hum of too many lights. I steered the trolley past the veggies, and Liam headed straight for the toy aisle. I informed him that I would be checking school supplies 2 aisles over. It began as usual. I peered casually over the top of the aisle to see how Liam was doing. I was looking through bargain notebooks. He was squatting close to the bottom shelf, looking through a Nerf dark clearance bin. However, there was also another person present, a slender man in his mid-40s, standing at the end of the aisle, wearing a tucked-in grey baseball cap, faded jeans, and a t-shirt. The fact that he wasn't shopping threw me off guard. He was holding a random plastic toy dinosaur. There was no cart or basket. He did not speak to Liam, not even close to him. However, he was merely standing there doing nothing. I gave him a look. He glanced up, locked eyes, then turned away, heading down the next aisle. It was uncomfortable. I dismissed it, though. Perhaps he was merely passing the time. After a few minutes, I went back to get Liam. Now he was telling me about this limited edition Fortnite game, comparing blasters or something. I gave an involuntary nod, but I looked around. The man had returned. This time, he pretended to browse while standing at the far end of the aisle, next to the RC vehicles, holding nothing. Yet by myself, yet without a cart. "All right, let's finish the list together," I remarked with a smile to Liam. He didn't dispute. He must have picked up on something in my tone. When we turned, I turned to glance back toward groceries. The man had also turned, maintaining his distance, but he was silent, as if he should have been there but wasn't. He went past the far end of the cereal aisle once more. "Nothing has been found yet." Now I could feel it in my gut as much as in my head. You can't express that uneasy sensation until it's too late. I went back through the frozen goods and pretended that I had forgotten something. And there he was, loitering behind the glass doors of microwavable meals, hands in his pockets, peering sideways, without even feigning to browse this time. That was sufficient. I leaned down and placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. "Now stay straight by me." "All right." He gave a nod. Didn't inquire as to why. I pushed the trolley more quickly as I made my way to the self-checkout. When I looked back once, he was there, round the corner as if he was going there but never quite made it. He didn't follow, though. After we went through the metal detectors, through the sliding doors, I looked around the lot. Nothing. Perhaps that was it, I thought. After paying and packing, we ventured out into the glaring late sunlight. Our vehicle was parked next to a cart return, 3 rows down. Liam's voice startled me as I was fumbling with the groceries and searching for the fob. "That person from inside, isn't he?" I raised my head. In the row opposite ours, he was crouching between 2 cars and acting like he was having a hard time tying his shoe. No bag, no cart. He was the only one looking. I remained silent. I just opened the rear door, popped the trunk, and pressed the fob. "Liam is in now." Without hesitation, he obeyed. After quickly loading the groceries and slamming the trunk, I shut Liam's door. After that, I did something without giving it any thought. I ignored the perspiration on my back and continued walking straight through the heat into the store, not turning to check behind me until I was through the sliding doors. I went inside and looked around the parking lot. He had stopped acting and was now standing. He had gotten up and was facing our car as if he was waiting, hands in his pockets. I went directly to customer service on foot. Someone is outside next to our car, and I believe he followed us inside the store. He wasn't going shopping. After a moment of hesitation, the woman behind the counter called for a manager. A man in a blue vest, short and balding, approached. Security was then summoned. Together, we made our way back to the entrance. He had left. No vehicle is leaving. Nobody is leaving. Simply disappeared. He was there from the toy aisle to the grocery store, according to the security footage they retrieved. Just lingering, just following. No conversation, no buying. I wasn't satisfied, even though they reported it, marked it, and promised to keep an eye out if he returned. I made a report on the non-emergency police line, filled them in on everything, and provided a description. I was supported by a store manager, but there was no physical altercation or criminality. Their options were limited. The fact that nothing occurred was what astounded me, because it nearly did. That feeling of him practicing, adhering to knowing how long he could hover before raising suspicions. We treated it as if it were normal. He had done this before. Never too close, nor too far. As if he knew what to seek. The following morning, I purchased a dashcam. If it didn't stop someone, I didn't care. Just in case, I wanted proof. Since then, I haven't allowed Liam to go unaccompanied in a store. A week later, he asked me why he now had to be close to the cart at all times. I didn't mince words, because the way that man was staring at you bothered me. Nor was it innocuous curiosity. It wasn't only strange, it was strategic. He bided his time for the ideal angle. It was a crowded supermarket in full daylight when I looked away. However, he proceeded with us as if we were on his list, and I learned for the first time that often the most frightening people are those who never say a word. Hovering was never my style as a mother. My parents let me to ride my bike till the street lights came on while I was growing up. I always assumed that I would treat my daughter in the same way, give her some freedom to explore. She's a kind, perceptive, and intelligent child, not the type to worrying about. On a steamy Tuesday in early July, that changed. At Bygham's Market, it was intended to be a brief dash back to school. This massive retail store is located in Millersburg, Indiana's more sedate area. The type of store that offers everything under one roof, from wiper fluid to watermelon. I reasoned that by leaving early, we would avoid the commotion. The actual back-to-school throng wouldn't arrive until late July, and the establishment would still be fully stocked. At that time, my daughter Ava was 7. She had one of those infectious full-body chuckles, and these huge glasses. She had inquiries all the time. What clouds feel like, how glue is formed, and why cats purr. She had the kind of curiosity that made people grin, but at night it made me double check my hair. The standard items were already in our cart. A rainbow set of gel pens, glue sticks, folders with cartoon characters, and a watermelon-shaped plastic pencil box. The school supply area, which backed onto the toy aisles, was where we were. "May I visit the dolls?" She hugged the trolley as though it were a jungle gym and asked. "I take it they're only 2 aisles away?" I inquired. She gave a nod. "Okay, but keep in mind what we stated. If someone isn't wearing a name tag and a red shirt, don't talk to them. Come get me if something feels strange. All I'm doing is comparing the sizes of binder." She smiled, saluted me briefly, and ran away. I took a look at my phone. The time was 11:22 a.m. After looking through binder rings to see if her school permitted the metal ones, and I emailed my husband to remind him to pick some milk on the way home. I must have heard her voice no more than 2 minutes later. Just conversing, not yelling, not frightened. Then I heard a voice again. A man's calm, quiet, and welcoming. In my stomach, something twisted. I moved to the end of the aisle and shoved a trolley aside. Ava was standing with her back to me, clutching a pink-haired doll. A man in his mid-40s or older, wearing short sleeves, a button-up shirt, olive cargo pants, and a baseball cap stood about 4 feet away. Cap that reads really well outside. He wasn't making contact with her. He was not even within touching distance. He stood casually, as if he had accidentally bumped into her as a neighbor, as though he had said this 100 times. He was grinning, not a grin, but a gentle practice smile. His words, "You got to know where to look," were directed at the rear of the shop. The nice toys that are on clearance are kept close to the loading area. The majority of people don't even go back there. I turned the corner completely and began to walk, not sprint. Not shout, just enough to let him know I was there. "But that's not where the dolls are," I overheard Ava say, calm and steady. I put my hand on her shoulder as I approached. "Hey, sweetie," I acknowledged. "Do we know this man?" Ava remarked, looking up and blinking once. "No." The man's face remained unchanged. He remained smiling, as if I had caught him reading a book over someone's shoulder. He stepped back, palms up. "I apologize. Merely being cordial." I informed her that there were some inexpensive dolls back there because she mentioned that she enjoyed them. "Are you employed here?" I inquired. He gave a head shake. "No, only going shopping." Then he turned and left. No guilt, no rush. Simply turned and proceeded. I took Ava's hand and went with her. He didn't approach the register. He didn't pick up any carts. He did not look at the shelves. He passed the gadgets, then the men's clothes, then the outdoor equipment. He didn't slow down. Then he went past the garden area, past the seasonal decor, and straight out the automated doors. Just gone, no bag, no cart, no receipt. I didn't yell or chase after him. I simply stood at the window, unable to comprehend its normalcy, the deliberate, silent departure. "Was he bad?" Ava questioned, looking up at me. I didn't respond. I simply accompanied her on her walk to customer service. Perhaps 22 years old. The woman behind the counter was obviously upset, but was making an effort to remain composed. I told her everything. Brian, the floor manager, was flagged down by her. I described everything. His height, the jeans, the cap, and the way he left without making a purchase. He kept his hands off her. I told him he didn't act aggressively or yell. However, he attempted to guide her to the rear of the shop. He indicated that there were free toys in the stock area. After giving us a slow nod, Brian led us to a podium with security pulling up video feeds close to gadgets. They would investigate and determine which camera he might have, he said. Appeared on. He returned after 10 minutes of waiting. He was not plainly visible on the front cameras. If the entrances are packed, the angles may occasionally miss them. Nobody here knew who he was. "Do you think he's done it before?" I inquired. He didn't respond. Asked if I would like to leave my phone number. Though I didn't anticipate a call, I did. We didn't complete our shopping. I held Ava's shoulder the entire time as I walked her out. She didn't protest or wriggle. I believe she was aware of the problem in her own way. I prepared her favorite dish that evening. Shells and cheese, the kind with too much butter. At the table, we ate. I sat next to her rather than across from her. I said, "Sweetie," very carefully, "when someone talks to you like that, someone you don't know, you come get me, okay? Even if they seem nice. Could he be attempting to take me?" Her empty bowl caught my attention. "I'm not sure." And I didn't. That was my biggest fear. He seems harmless, didn't appear menacing. He had the appearance of an uncle. He pretended to fit in. That's what I remembered. I asked the principal. Her school was hosting a stranger danger seminar prior to autumn. When I called 2 days later, I asked if they could perform one earlier in the year, as they normally did. He concurred. Ava never longer goes off by herself in shopping since that day. She remains near. I never wanted her to understand, but she does now. Additionally, I give that man more thought than I would like to admit it. The reason is not what he did, but rather what he nearly did. He exuded confidence and casualness, as if he was aware of how long a parent would take to select a binder, as if he had already done it. And I have repeatedly asked myself, what if her voice hadn't been heard? What if I had been preoccupied for an additional minute? Then what? You always believe that you are immune to it. You convince yourself that you'd take note. You would anticipate it. However, not all monsters have claws. They occasionally have baseball caps and quiet voices. They're also only 1 aisle away. They're also only 1 aisle away. I never imagined that a mouthwash stop would cause me to wonder about our true level of safety in public areas. Late August of 2021 was the time, yet tight, yet humid. Those strange interim months following the worst of the pandemic, when everything seemed to be returning to normal, but wasn't. Everyone was still a little tense, even though more people were out and stores had reopened, as if we were all anticipating the next mishap. I was a private night security contractor working the 3rd shift at a textile depot south of Florence, South Carolina, at the time. Lot of walking, long hours, and no air conditioning. I was renting a studio apartment behind a car dealership, and most days I hardly saw the sun. The routine drained me, but the pay was decent, since it was less congested back then. I would frequently stop by the neighborhood supermarket or Walmart on my way home. My back hurt from standing in those fucking boots for so long, and I was sweating and sore when I got off at 6:15 a.m. that night. I had not taken off my uniform. The navy shirt, black tactical trousers, a radio fastened to my belt, and a badge fastened. I had run out of necessities, even though I was no longer on duty. Deodorant, mouthwash, and a fresh pair of socks were required. In addition, I didn't want to be without my phone charger, because it had started working strangely. Quick in and out, just basic errands. I parked on the side close to the lawn and garden door of the Walmart on Ashbury Road, which I had visited 100 times before. Even though it was early, the sun had already risen, and there were a few cars strewn about the lot. Still thinking about the call had taken at 4 a.m. regarding a raccoon tripping the motion sensor, I recall yawning. I reached for a cart. It had been one of those weeks. At first, I didn't notice him. He blended in. A tidy grey polo shirt, khaki cargo pants, and work boots are worn by someone with an average physique, possibly in their early 50s. His gait made me think of someone who was accustomed to giving commands. No slouching, arms relaxed, straight back. I heard, "Morning, sir," as I was making my way to the hygiene aisle. "Perhaps you left your phone near your car." Mid-step, I paused. The man was standing near to the seasonal aisle divider, about 10 feet back, one hand perched on a display rack's end. He hadn't approached me. I gave him a look. "Apologies," he grinned. "I wanted to let you know. If you want to make sure before someone takes it, you may have left your phone outside your car." I gave my pocket a pat. "I left my phone exactly where I left it." "No," I said, "I have it. But thanks." He nodded as though he meant it. But there was a problem. There was no Walmart vest on him. Not even a clipboard, a walkie, or a name tag. However, he stood as if he was accustomed to being inside. "You're employed here?" I inquired. "I assist him," he said carelessly. "Just keeping an eye out for things related to loss avoidance." I furrowed my brow. "Have you got identification?" He gave a small laugh. We are no longer required to wear them. There were too many client complaints during CO. You are aware of the situation. Bullshit. Every genuine employee I'd encountered, including Postco, had at least something recognizing them, particularly those who work in loss prevention. I grumbled and resumed my leisurely trek. I walked down the aisle with bath products and shampoo. I looked over my shoulder as I paused to get deodorant. Once more, he found himself halfway down the aisle, merely perusing a shelf without paying much attention to anything. I clenched my neck. You learn to read posture from years of working in security. He had to alert. 2 square shoulders. I accelerated, made a rapid right turn, turning left beyond Old 10. I landed up in toys after circling around electronics. I was hoping he would follow. As expected, a few minutes later, he turned the corner as if he were simply aimlessly strolling. I pretended to look through remote control automobiles while I stood motionless. Everything good. I didn't look up when I asked. Just checking on things, he said, taking a step toward her. Recently, there has been a lot of thievery. You'd be shocked. I turned to look at him. Will you ever present me with identification? His face shifted. Only a little. Less amiable. Tighter mouth. You should show more deference, he remarked. All I'm doing is my job. Next, get your boss. Right here. I'll wait. At that point, his entire attitude changed. The phony politeness faded. He gave me another look, and then huffed briefly. He responded, "Whatever, man," and pivoted on his heel. I remained motionless as he left, heading back toward the door by the self-checkout other than any employee area. My chest thumped with my heart. That exchange didn't sit well with me at all. There was a problem. I strolled over to the front desk, where the customer service was located. Someone was returning a blender with the assistance of a young woman wearing a blue vest. She grinned at the sight of me waiting. "Am I able to assist you?" "Yeah," I replied. "I think there's a guy pretending to be security in here." Her grin dimmed. "What does he look like?" I characterized him, his attire, stature, physique, and his words. She and the older woman behind her looked at each other. "A manager, perhaps. Will you please wait a moment?" she inquired. After a minute, a short, square-billed man emerged from the back office with a radio and a legitimate badge. That was his name tag, Daniel, Asset Protection. I went over everything once more. Daniel scowled deeply. He mentioned that we had previously had someone who fit that description loitering in the parking lot, usually just before sunset or early in the morning. When I last saw the man, I volunteered to lead him out the front exit. We didn't observe him inside. While I stood close to the registers, looking out through the sliding glass doors, Daniel used his radio to call another team member, and they checked the parking lot. He was not visible to me. It was 15 minutes before Daniel came back. He gave a headshake. "He's no longer there." Once more, I inquired. Daniel gave a nod. "This month, there have been 3 reports. He's not interested in products. He goes after consumers, usually by themselves, early, and among folks who appear exhausted or preoccupied. Says stuff like he's with security or you drop something. We believe he's attempting to get folks outdoors. For what purpose?" Daniel paused before responding. "Robbery, perhaps worse, is the best assumption. Perhaps collaborating with someone. Hard to say." Shortly after, I completed a brief incident form and departed. They volunteered to walk me to my vehicle. I agreed. That day, I didn't get all I came in for. I didn't use the charger. I just wanted to lock the doors and get back in my car. It wasn't what he said that most stayed with me. It was his appearance of normalcy, calm, self-assured, as if he knew precisely how long he had before someone confronted him. I started shopping around peak hours that morning, got pepper spray on mine, and made sure to keep an eye on myself, especially outside the garden entrance, because people like him, you're likely to be exhausted, preoccupied, and courteous. They rely on your desire to remain silent. However, I've seen too many reports and worked too many night shifts to comply, and now, whenever someone in casual attire requests that I accompany them to their automobile or says just step over here for a second, I don't give them a second. I yell at them and move straight forward, toward the throng, directly in front of the cameras. Toward the throng, directly in front of the cameras. It's not because I'm afraid people won't believe me that I don't typically share this tale. Many don't, but because I've been making an effort to quit thinking about it myself for the past year. However, I always end up back there when I enter a public restroom, especially when I'm by myself. Once more, I hear boots. The air shifts once more. I feel like I'm being watched. This occurred on a Thursday in early October of last year. On my way to work at around 6:30 p.m., I made a stop at a Walmart. Nothing like a huge theatrical shopping expedition. I was getting some items. 4 night shifts. I always pack a few travel-sized items, protein bars, hair ties, and one of those electrolyte beverages. At Crest Hill Medical in Ravensfield, a mid-sized town just north of Pittsburgh, I handle the nightly emergency room shift. One have been an RN for the past 8 years or so. I brought up that point not out of compassion, but because anyone who works in a hospital long enough gains a second instinct for people, danger, and the moment when a suspicion turns into a certainty. I hadn't had time to stop by home that evening because I had gone to the gym first. I still had to put on my scrubs. Then, I thought I had enough time to stop at Walmart, grab what I needed, and change in the hospital locker room even though I was running late. I knew I had to urinate by the time I was ready to check out, not in a desperate way, but with the sensation that I'll regret not going now. The restrooms were located directly next to the customer service counter at the front of the store. It's like 100 bathrooms you've seen. Cracked tile flooring, fluorescent lighting, antiseptic beige paint that most likely complies with regulatory codes, and the subtle perfume of lemon disinfectant all attempt to hide something worse and older. When I entered, it was deserted. Nothing. No reverberating footsteps. No voices. I walked from the end to the second stall, hung my little basket, and took a seat. I recall going through my phone's menu. I received a meme from my husband, Nate, stating that nurses are 40% sarcastic and 60% intoxicated. I heard the bathroom door open as I was responding to his text. Click. Then there were footsteps. Not flats, not sneakers, not boots, not heels, solid, self-assured. They entered and paused. Somewhere, not in front of the mirror. Not next to a stall. From where I sat, I couldn't see. I also didn't bend over to look. At first, I assumed that someone had entered and was looking at themselves in the mirror, possibly waiting for a child, texting, or reapplying lipstick. However, nothing took place. There was silence, no hand dryer, no coughing, no shuffle, no sighing, no stall doors opening. 1 minute went by, and then 2. Nothing has changed. It's odd how fast your mind changes. I was initially just irritated. People are constantly doing strange things. However, my stomach began to tighten after a few minutes. It wasn't merely silence. Still, it was deliberate. I put my phone down and paid attention. Nothing has changed. I glanced beneath the stall wall by leaning forward just enough. Black leather boots with sharpened toes that were clean and undamaged were present near the tiled wall close to the entrance, facing the line of stalls, simply standing motionless, without moving or shifting positions. My heart used to kick forcefully before settling into that quick, shallow rhythm. Dread, not panic just yet. I waited. I didn't move or flush. I simply remained there, breathing as softly as possible and straining my ears. What was the reason behind her silence? Then the illogical began to creep in. Was she? Are you sleepwalking? Had she become frightened after hearing me? Was there someone she was waiting for? However, none of those made sense because she had entered, proceeded a short distance, halted, and remained still ever since. I looked at the time. It had been 8 minutes. Silence for 8 minutes. I grabbed my phone and took the only sensible action. I sent Nate an SMS. Strange circumstance. In Walmart's restroom, a woman is standing by the door without doing anything. Been here for a long time. He called me right away. I replied in a whisper. I whispered in a low voice, "Don't say my name. Just stay on the line." I tried to explain, without making any noise when he inquired what was going on. And that's when I heard it. Click. One of the boots creaked after turning a little. The bathroom door opened gently. The door creaked and then closed again with a gentle thud, but I didn't hear her go. I waited 4-5 seconds. 10. Nothing. I leaned forward once more after that. She had left. No legs, no boots, no noise. I got up, flushed, reached for my basket with a rubbery hand, and walked out slowly. There was nobody in the restroom. It felt empty, even the air. I immediately went to customer service. I spoke to the woman behind the counter in a calm tone. I'd been schooled to remain composed under duress. I described the incident. She asked if I wanted her to call a manager and nodded slowly, as if she had already heard something stranger. Yes, I replied. A man approached wearing a red vest and a headphone. I also told him. Security was then summoned. Brian, a heavy-set man, approached and offered to escort me to my vehicle. I explained that I only needed to change before I left for work. He walked me out nevertheless. Thank you. I kept thinking about it later that evening. Not because anything took place. Nothing happened. But because it felt as though something nearly happened. By 3 a.m., the hospital was quiet. I messaged Nate once again to find out if he thought I was exaggerating. His response was, no, not at all. However, that wasn't the strangest aspect. The following day was the most peculiar aspect. I returned to Walmart out of curiosity, not to confront anyone, just to take a look. It was the same woman who had previously worked in customer service. I whispered to her if they had ever looked at the video. She approached and replied. Security said nothing showed up on the bathroom cameras, but we don't have cameras inside, just at the door. I blinking, but she entered, didn't she? She paused. They said that only you were seen entering during that time on the restroom hallway video. I was motionless as I stood. Nobody else. She gave a head shake. 10 minutes later, no, an elderly woman, followed by a mother with 2 children, but no one in front of or during you. They said as much. I could see she wanted to stop talking since she was uneasy. I didn't push. When I returned to the hospital that evening, I couldn't get rid of the feeling because if I was the only one using the restroom, what in the world did I hear? What was it that I saw? What was that silent observer standing there in boots? I've thought about it 1,000 times. Perhaps the camera angle missed her sneaking in, directly behind me. There might be a blind spot. Perhaps she entered and exited so stealthily that she failed to notice. However, I understand what I observed. I understand how I felt. Confusion wasn't the issue. Furthermore, there was no reluctance. That was in the waiting position. She departed after I spoke to Nate, and a male voice reverberated through the restroom door. I no longer use public restrooms, if it's possible. Every time, I look beneath the stall doors. Before I enter, I always listen. It was altered. Something within me, since nothing took place. However, something nearly did, and I'd rather never know what it was. I didn't do crazy things as a child. I'm Eliza, and up until that point in my life, I had never stolen anything, not even a piece of gum. However, making poor choices might feel like minor successes when you're 16, impetuous, upset with the world, and fed up with being broke. I got into a heated argument with my foster mother that morning. She kept reminding me that I wasn't truly hers, so I told her I was done playing family. If I didn't agree with the rules, she instructed me to leave. Yes, I did. Just my backpack and a hoodie knotted around my waist, no phone, no money. Taking the 600 bus to the Omega Mart Supercenter off Highway 91. I thought I may grab a snack if no one was looking and spend a few hours strolling about somewhere with air conditioning. To be honest, I had no intention of stealing. However, I noticed this set of velvet scrunchies close to the health and beauty section. 8 hues that seem luxurious and velvety. Like other girls, I pictured myself wearing them to school. I will no longer use broken rubber bands to conceal my hair in untidy buns. I wanted them so badly that I stuffed one in my hoodie's front pocket while feigning to look up costs, even though it was stupid. The container. I crumpled it and threw it in the cleaning aisle behind a pile of sparkly paper towel packs. I should have left at that moment, but I chose not to. I stayed in the snack for a little too long, wondering if I could also smuggle a little bag of chips, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Cold, calloused, heavy fingers. A deep voice murmured, "Come with me," from behind. When I turned around, I saw a man who was easily 63, muscular like a linebacker, with a sun-spotted bald scalp and a close-cropped beard that obscured his face. In addition to his navy windbreaker and black slacks, he had a badge that read Omega Security on his left breast, which glinted faintly. "What is this about?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "The word theft," he said bluntly. My cheeks started to get heated. "All right, have a look." "I apologize. I can simply cover the cost. I stayed in the store the entire time." He didn't answer, simply put a big, non-aggressive hand on my upper arm and murmured, "Don't test me." He started leading me beyond the checkout lines, away from the patrons, and toward the grey doors by the employees' only storage passageway. I wanted to back off and voice my objection more loudly, but something about his composed, controlled movements gave me the impression that if I protested, it would only get worse. We entered the storage area through the doors. Dimly lighted by flickering overheads, tall metal shelves loomed on both sides, lined with boxes and crates. Then he switched a light switch above a tiny door that was wedged between two mop buckets. They unveiled a set of concrete stairs that led down into the shadows. "Let's move," he murmured, pointing to the floor. I stopped. "The office is where? Do you prefer someone else, or do you typically have cameras?" His fingers tightened slightly on my arm, but he didn't respond. Instead, he just stared at me blankly. They kept the surveillance equipment downstairs, since they thought it was just a janky layout. I started to descend the stairs. I heard a wham as soon as I reached the third stair. Behind me, the door above smashed. My heart stopped beating. I ran back up after turning around. Hello. I tried the knob on the door. Locked. What the hell? With my fists hammering the metal, I mumbled. No answer. I took my phone out. No signal, of course. I descended carefully, the steps creaking behind me. The air became heavy with mildew and moisture. The basement was bigger than I had anticipated and resembled an underground garage. There were no cars or people, only a cement floor, exposed pipes, and an old wooden chair in the middle of the space. Its arms held rusting handcuffs and chains that were fastened to the wall behind it. "This is insane," I muttered to myself. The quiet felt oppressive. There was merely a faint leak coming from off to the left. Sitting on the bottom step felt much worse, and I didn't want to walk any more into the room. I squatted down and looked around the room. Something didn't smell right. Hidden in the darkness at the far end. Similar to meat that has gone bad. I wanted to think that this was some kind of strange loss, scare strategy for prevention, or simply a dumb joke. Then I remembered the man's uniform. He didn't wear a name tag like everyone else in the store, and his badge had appeared loose, almost sewn on with thick thread. He railed like sweat, soil, and copper, and his hands were covered with crusted muck. This man didn't seem like Omega Mart security to me. I grabbed my phone once more and paced close to the stairway till a bar came to life. I called the shop. "Thank you for calling Omega Mart," a cheerful voice responded. "Kristen is here. How may I assist you?" I stumbled to say. "I am in your basement. Someone brought me down here. A male." His words were, "I stole something." He appeared to be security, but I'm not sure now. He may have locked me in. "What basement?" Kristen's voice became less bright as she asked. The door above creaked open at that moment. Footfalls, a whistling voice, a brook, the underweight moaning of wood. I took one of the chains, wound it around my wrist like a homemade weapon, and backed toward the far wall next to the chair. With trembling knees, I used one hand to hold the chair upright. Two figures appeared. The first was the man, still wearing the fake uniform, who grabbed me. The second was an elderly man without a shirt, his eyes beaming with joy and his grey hair matted in the back. He wore only trousers with red-stained cuffs and was barefoot. Well, sounded the older one. She's a little spitfire. Huh. Have a seat in the chair, sweetheart, the imposter for security said. We'll be gentle. My stomach twisted. I almost dropped the chair because my hands were perspiring so much. You tight? The elderly man licked his lips and touched himself, saying, I'll bet you are, I said. Get the hell away from me. I'll murder you. They chuckled. She believes that she will benefit from the rickety old chair. The impersonator laughed. He's feisty, which I enjoy. With a smile, the elderly man removed his belt and wrapped it over his knuckles. I took a step back until my heels struck the wall. No place to go. At that time, the chair felt heavier. Who's down there? From the stairway came a male voice. The men stopped. Footfalls were heard above. Alarms are going off in stores. Who is having fun? The two men became frightened. The elderly one growled, Go, go. They scurried to the far end of the room and vanished via a secret door that I had previously missed, one that went behind the store into the woods. An alarm burst to life as they opened it. The ceiling flashed red lights. A boy sprinted down the stairs. Emblem of the store. Caleb is the name tag. When he noticed my wide eyes, he stopped. Holy shit, are you all right? I sobbed as I fell to the floor after dropping the chair. I am security, he claimed. I was locked down here by him. Caleb called for assistance. Kristen, the actual manager, arrived shortly after. Police officers, too. A few security cameras had captured the man in the uniform, but only the first time I walked into the store. He was not listed in the personnel files. Nobody was aware of his identity. The elderly man was never captured on video. They discovered a decaying dog cadaver behind the pipes in the basement. The secret door opened into thick woods and led to a rusty storm exit. While the police took my statement, Kristen provided me with a blanket and waited with me. What would happen now? I asked her. Softly, they'll investigate, she said. Eliza, you should never trust anyone unless they have a legitimate Omega Mart name tag on them going forward. Upstairs is security. It has always been. I nodded while still trembling. I just wanted a stupid scrunchie. She gave me a shoulder squeeze. You're fortunate. Some girls are unable to return up those stairs on foot. The men never turned up. Not yet. Anyhow. The men never turned up. Not yet. Anyhow. I never doubted myself in front of others. I don't tend to overreact. As a single mother of 2 children, ages 8 and 13, I've grown accustomed to managing things alone. Their father hardly ever calls and lives 3 states away. I therefore don't freak out when anything seems strange. Even though I pay attention, what transpired on Thursday night made me wonder how many times I've failed to notice the warning signs in the past. How near we are now without being aware of it. In Laurel Glen, a little Tennessee town that has expanded just enough to have a store. It was a typical evening, essentially a Walmart knockoff, but with less expensive lighting and even less expensive employee training. We traveled. My youngest, Chloe, wanted new folders for the upcoming school year, and my oldest, Emma, had been reminding me 4 days that her gym shoes were no longer fitting. So we went out after supper. Despite my fatigue, I assumed we would finish everything at once. Out on the edge of the lot, we parked beneath the fading street light. 5 minutes after getting out of the automobile, your shirt was still stuck to your back due to the humidity. Chloe wondered why the moon was so orange, and I told her that it was most likely due to either pollution or humidity, or both. That's how I remember it. It's probably the apocalypse, Emma replied, rolling her eyes. This was as upbeat as she normally is before going shopping. We entered through the garden side door. It's never too crowded. Like a wall, the air conditioner struck us. Emma took out her phone as Chloe, as usual, jumped into the trolley. I quickly became bored and grabbed a basket, not expecting much. After about 5 minutes of wandering, we came to a corner close to the Halloween section. The candy had already been distributed in early September. Foam tombstones, giant Kit Kat bags, and plastic pumpkins. When Chloe saw the caramel, she squealed. Apple lollipops. Then it took place. A man without a cart, perhaps in his mid-30s, with a buzz kit and a simple t-shirt, quickly rounded the same corner from the other side. He almost collided with us. I automatically said, "Pardon me." He nearly bumped into our cart, but he muttered something, avoided eye contact, and stopped directly beside the chocolates. Perhaps, I thought, even if he was merely rushing, there was something off about the way he stood. Unlike someone who genuinely desired candy, he wasn't selecting it. He was only partly paying attention to us. Chloe requested permission to snap a photo of a candy bag, in the form of a ghost. The man literally flinched, as if the sound had surprised him. Then he gave me a fleeting glimpse before quickly averting his eyes, which made my skin crawl. His jaw was tight, his eyes were twitching, and he held nothing. Just standing there acting like you're searching through candy. No cart, no basket. I ignored it and steered the cart away. We went to Jammy's Four Ladies. They had fluffy socks that Chloe liked, and Emma wanted new leggings. When I met him again, I was attempting to concentrate on sizes. The same man passing slowly, with a huge bag of now Halloween candy was clumsily held in both arms. He wasn't trying to find clothing. He wasn't acting at all. He just kind of walked right by, too near for anyone to enter an open area. The aisle. He was not shopping, but I followed him as he turned toward the shoes. He was observing. At first, I remained silent. Perhaps I was dreaming. Perhaps he simply lacked spatial awareness. Desperately, I wanted to believe that. Across the aisle, the girls moved toward the boys' area. I looked up while still rummaging through my pajama trousers, now dressed as the youngster. The man moved slowly around the racks while clutching the same absurd candy bag as if it were a baby. He paused close to the end cap, glanced around idly, and then fixed my gaze on my girls for a brief but sufficient amount of time. Without hesitation, I moved to stand between him and the females. "Do you see that man?" I murmured to Emma. She called it the candy creep. "He has been circling." Yes. A shiver ran down my spine. It was more than just my paranoia. Emma had also observed. After passing through one of those tiny cloth dividers that we used to divide the aisles, we entered the girls' clothing area. In order to keep both kids in sight, I hoisted Chloe into the cart and began to travel more slowly while observing. It was several minutes before I saw him again. I nearly relaxed, but he reappeared, this time in the girls' area, pretending to gaze at glittering Justice tees that were obviously for elementary-aged children, while holding that same bag. He continued to peer with sharp, fast looks. He snapped his head away and shuffled a few paces, feigning to peruse. As soon as I got his attention, I took out my phone and turned the card away. I was unsure of my next course of action, make a phone call and snap a picture of him. However, at that moment, standing at the far aperture with an excellent line of sight into the girls' clothing, he ducked back through the barrier and circled back to the boys' side. My stomach turned over when he did something else. He took out his phone, glanced at it, typed something, and then fixed me with his gaze. I went cold. He averted his gaze once more and left as if nothing had occurred. However, I had lost my composure. I had an electrifying sensation on my skin. There was a problem. Totally incorrect. Then I noticed a second man standing next to some gadgets. Older, perhaps in his mid-40s, bald, with his arms folded, and looking straight at me. No cart, simply standing close to a partially bare phone case shelf. I quickly made my way back to the junior department while feigning to be perusing tank tops. Both of my girls realized something was strange, so I kept them in the cart. I whispered to Emma, "Don't get lost. Remain near. We may depart shortly." A third guy appeared as I looked around. He strolled like he belonged there. He slipped into the girls' garments, grabbed a Justice hoodie, set it down, went to get baby things, returned, looked at Chloe in the cart, and didn't even bat an eye when I looked him in the face. Simply turned aside and turned to return to the infant aisle. "Get out if you're right," I told myself at the time. "No one will make fun of you if you're mistaken." I hesitated, though. Still, I made an effort to finish. I led the way to women's clothing and continued to search. Never saw them again. The strange pressure subsided. I resumed deep breathing. Within my chest, we left quickly. As I packed suitcases into the trunk, my hands were trembling. I drove directly home, shut the doors, and spent hours sitting on the couch and gazing at the front door. And now when it's almost 2 in the morning, I can't sleep because I might be mistaken. What if they were observing us, planning? What if they were only waiting for me to drop my guard for a single second? It was a prop, the candy. The hoodie was as well. Men weren't shopping here. They weren't by themselves. They weren't arbitrary. They were observing. I have no evidence. I have intuition, but I don't have names, pictures, or videos. And they screamed tonight. In the morning, I'll give the store a call. Perhaps see if there is any video. To get it on file. Perhaps just report it. Perhaps they should be aware, but I don't expect them to take any action. And perhaps another mother won't be fortunate enough to notice when those who linger become too near. I was raised in a weary Appalachian town that most people just visit. Walmart is the only place to buy groceries after 9 p.m. And every third home has a broken porch light. The town wasn't bad, that's right. However, it was the kind of setting where negative things may occur and be lost in rust and small conversation. The year it occurred, I was 15. I was young enough to think I could joke my way through the scary elements of the world, but I was still just old enough to know it for what it was. My sister Amanda and I had that fall created the foolish custom of accompanying our dad to the neighborhood Walmart every Wednesday night after supper. He would force us to accompany him in order to get items we had forgotten on Sunday. It didn't bother us. Amanda was 17 years old, bold, humorous, and unafraid. She gave those dull journeys the feel of a comedic sketch, particularly late at night, when the unusual people crept out like cockroaches beneath fluorescent lights. We would make fun of the oddballs we spotted there, and it was the beginning of it all. It was early October, cooler than normal, and the wind was blowing dried leaves across the cracked asphalt of the Pine Hill Walmart parking lot. My father, complaining about the weather and the throng, parked his ancient SUV next to the cart return and instructed us to move quickly. By the time we reached the seasonal aisle, Amanda and I were already giggling and whispering. She challenged me to put a bag of pumpkin-shaped peeps in my hoodie pocket in an attempt to frighten my father, because Halloween candy was out in full force. She pointed and gave me a hard ribcage before we came around the end of an aisle. "Yo, that guy's giving full-on creepy uncle energy," she said. I noticed him when I looked up. He was tall and lanky, with pale complexion and heavy glasses that accentuated his eyes, and he was standing close to the clearance DVDs, staring at nothing. His dirty brown hair was combed so finely that it appeared painted on, and it was parted exactly down the middle. He was dressed in pants and an oversized tan jacket with a flannel collar that appeared to be excessively large, as well as soiled off-white footwear. Nervous but playing along, I laughed. "All right, yes, there is a dine special that is just waiting to happen." Amanda grinned. "Most likely has a windowless van." We believed he had not heard us. He didn't flinch at all. We continued to move, but he continued to appear. Down 3 aisles. He was staring at canned soup once more. The toothpaste came next. In electronics, however, merely being close to a display of counterfeit headphones. Always silent. It's always there. Dad didn't notice. He was too busy complaining about how much steak was costing. Finally, we loaded up and checked out. Went home after getting the goods. We were not followed out by the dude. It ought to have ended there. All it should have been was a humorous recollection between Amanda and me. However, it wasn't. I had trouble sleeping that night. I attributed it to the soda I had with supper, but I was unable to pinpoint the cause of the tightness in my chest. The box fan in the window was humming lightweight noise, and I had the covers tucked up under my chin. However, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched. A presence, not just a suspicion. I recall rising and going to the window to gaze out into the backyard. My gaze remained on the tree line, but it was too dark to see anything properly. The woods were directly in our backyard. Nothing changed. I did, however, lock the window as a precaution. For weeks, the feeling persisted. Like clockwork, I would always wake up between 2 and 3 in the morning. Dry mouth, heart pounding, and perspiration. I informed my mother. It was too much caffeine, she remarked. My father attributed it to horror films. Although it didn't feel like guilt, Amanda stated, I most likely had a guilty conscience from taking people. It was similar to being hunted. Then my parents abandoned me at home on a Saturday. They traveled 3 hours away to see relatives. At a sleepover, Amanda was present. I informed them that I was fine with being by myself. Normally, I like the silence. However, the air in the home felt thicker than normal that day, as if it were weighing down on me. I attempted to ignore it by playing games, watching YouTube, and even taking a nap, but I couldn't help but feel the need to watch out for window, behind the shower curtain, along the hallway. I gave my pal Jeremy a call and asked him to come get me so we could take a long drive, perhaps smoke, or simply relax somewhere other than my fucking home. He promised to arrive at 10 o'clock. I went to the curb, got my hoodie, and waited. I knew something wasn't right as soon as I got into his vehicle. Jeremy was not speaking normally. He continued to grasp the wheel too tightly and check his mirrors. Are you okay? I inquired. He gave one nod. Yes, ever since I moved out of my neighborhood. This guy has been following me. Initially didn't give it much thought, but now he's blowing lights to follow me. I tensed up. What sort of vehicle? He took another look. An older silver Toyota with a broken right headlight. I believe that plate begins with a P. I felt sick to my stomach. I pivoted in my chair. My heart stopped beating. At the next red light, the silver automobile arrived next to us, and the man from Walmart was in the driver's seat. He had the same thick glasses, tan jacket, and lifeless eyes. But now he was staring directly at me with his jaw clenched and his fangs exposed. He then banged the horn with his palm. I let out a yell. Jeremy was blown away. For over a minute, all we could hear was the sound of the engine and my labored breathing. What on earth is happening? At last, Jeremy inquired. No, I'm not sure. I stumbled. That's the Walmart man. Amanda and I made a joke about it. However, he was outside of my window. Did you see him? No. For weeks I sensed him. I simply was unaware until now. Jeremy made a quick turn onto Cedar Drive. Ignore this. The police station is where I'm heading. Originally a library, Pin A Hills Police Station is a squat brick structure. Tires squealing. We slammed in. We went inside while I was still trembling. Our friend Kayla's father, Cop Reeves, was the on-duty cop. A large man with doubtful eyes and a gentle face. After hearing both Jeremy's and my stories, he asked Jeremy if he could recall the license plate. It sprang out of Jeremy's memories. Officer Reeves's expression transformed as he entered it into the system, and I will always remember it. He became quite silent. He then turned to us after picking up the phone and calling to units. He informed me, "We're sending a car to your place, and another to look for the car. Hold on tight." They called my parents. They were on their way back already. I assumed that was the end, that he would be gone, and that it had all been a simple miscommunication. However, a police unit located the man 15 minutes later. He had given up driving. He was digging in my front yard, outside the window of my bedroom, through the shrubs. He had a duffel bag concealed behind the bushes when he was taken into custody. It contained a rusted crowbar, condoms, zip ties, duct tape, and a taser. And it didn't get any worse than that. The individual, whose name I will not mention here, had a history of stalking children and was a registered sex offender. He had served his time, been freed, and moved around town under false pretenses. Not even Pin A Hill was his home. He had been residing in his vehicle. He had waited and watched 4 days after following us out of Walmart that evening and parking across from our house. It was taken seriously by the local DAR. They had sufficient grounds to detain him without bail based on the stalking, the intent, and the contents of his backpack. He didn't ever come clean. Didn't have to. After that, everything fell into place. 4 months. I didn't get enough sleep. Every night, I left the light on in my bedroom. Obtained a window lock. Motion lights were fitted. Dad held on to his old shotgun. In Walmart, Amanda never cracked jokes. Once more, What happened wasn't the most frightening part. That's what nearly happened. The covert manner in which he entered our lives without our knowledge. How simple it was to ignore him. How we chuckled as we believed we were in control, even if we were actually already being pursued. Even if we were actually already being pursued. When that occurred, I was 22 years old. Even after 10 years, I continue to think about it at the most peculiar times. When I hear a stranger remark something little weird, or when someone walks a bit too closely behind me in a store. The year was 2013. I used to reside in a Georgian suburb outside of Savannah, not the tourist favorite old area with cobblestones and Spanish moss. The area where chain restaurants, supermarkets, and parking lots are spaced out every half mile. I married young, at the age of 20. By the time I was 22, I had a daughter who was almost 2 years old, a mortgage that we were barely making ends meet, and a husband who put in 50 hours a week installing HVAC systems. That evening, we had no intention of visiting Walmart. We just finished our dinner, meatloaf left over. I recall that. Additionally, the infant had messed up with the mashed potatoes. We had nearly run out of wipes. I required milk. It's like that. One of those really short journeys. Let's simply head to the Forsyth one, I told my spouse, Evan. Compared to the one by the mall, it is closer. He concurred. He stated he would accompany me, even though he didn't want to go. We strapped the infant into the car seat, wrapped her up, and drove the short distance. It was a Tuesday, most likely around 8:45 p.m. All this because the store appeared to be half dead, and the sun had already set. There aren't many cars in the lot, and the shadows are created by the buzzing yellow street lights. It was freezing inside. My skin constantly felt parched under those fluorescent lights. Evan and I parted ways. He wanted to look at the sporting goods discount rack. He was constantly searching for inexpensive fishing lures or discounted ammunition. I then led our daughter and the trolley over to the infant area. I was just there for 5 minutes. Excuse me, someone said as I leaned down to pick up a small pack of pink hair ties. Anticipating a store staff, I turned. I noticed an Asian woman, perhaps 5 feet tall, standing uncomfortably near the cart, most likely in her hair was shoulder length. Her smile was composed and courteous, and she was in her 50s. She had a large-looking crossbody purse and a small black tablet in her hand. Yes, I said, already stepping back a little. Do you think that God exists? She inquired. I blinked. I wasn't sure how to respond. Despite my Catholic upbringing, I didn't attend church. I detested being impolite and was never good at confrontation, especially when I simply nodded at her because she appeared like a kind person. Yes, I said. Her eyes glowed. Not warm, just brighter. Good, I said. She said. I want to show you something. She rotated the iPad to face me and tapped the screen. A slideshow came to life. English language expressions, such as God is not a man, she's waiting, and pictures that appeared abstract but rather religious. A shimmering figure, clouds, and some lettering in a language I couldn't identify. I tried to push the cart forward and murmured, I'm sorry, I must. Just a minute, she hurriedly said. It is significant. You think so? This is for you. Then, I made an effort to be polite. I looked down at my kid, who was fiddling with the cart's tiny steering wheel. No, I said more forcefully. Thank you. She continued to follow. She followed me every time I turned an aisle. She started to speak more. Something about a gathering invitation, a secret, or a female prophet. She then gave me one of her business cards. It was called the Spirit and Bride Church and had a gold cross on the front. However, a local address was scrawled on the back. It was only a house number and a street I had never heard of, not a church. I said, I'm sorry, now obviously attempting to leave. She persisted. Are you a local resident? She inquired. Do you wish for your daughter to live in peace? Security. This Thursday is our meeting day. Bring her over. I said nothing. I simply stuffed the card into my purse after nodding. Evan showed up at that point. You good, babe? He said as he approached me from behind, while brandishing a cheap fishing knife. The woman stopped. When she turned to face him, her attitude abruptly altered. She didn't bid farewell. There was no smile on her face. She simply turned and strode out in the direction of the rear of the shop. I didn't even explain what had occurred to Evan. Not really, I responded. A woman was attempting to get me to attend her church. He pulled a face. Strange, indeed. After paying, we departed. Months passed before I gave it any thought. When I viewed the post, it was January. My daughter was napping and I was half asleep on the couch, browsing Facebook. Tasha, a girl with whom I attended high school, shared one of those cautionary tales for all women. She brought up a Walmart, so I took notice. Please use caution if you visit the Walmart on Windsor Road. It stated that there is an organization posing as a church. An elderly Asian woman is there and two dudes. She is approaching women to inquire about their belief in God. She then provides them with a fictitious church address. It's not a place of worship. Individuals have vanished. My relative nearly collided with a van. Although they are looking, the cops haven't done share this, please. I was chilly. I took the worn-out purse from the closet and threw it on the ground. It was unlikely. It had been months since I had used that bag. The inner zipper pocket still had the card. The handwritten address, the gold cross, and the church name are all identical. It wasn't the worst part, though. I checked the address. It was no longer even on a roadway. They had removed the listing. Google Maps displayed a hazy home with windows sealed up. The door had a crimson paint job. I showed Evan by calling him into the room. Pale-faced, he said, "You think it's the same person?" Whispering, "Same exact story, same pitch, same tablet." Each of us gazed at the television. Then I had another thought. She was aware that I had a daughter. She caught sight of her. "Yes. Do you want safety for your daughter?" She questioned me. She said that to how many other women? We attempted to report it. I made a call to the non-emergency number. Although she seemed exhausted, the woman I spoke with was friendly. After taking the information, she assured me that they would monitor it. It never materialized. However, I destroyed that card and never again went into a store at night by myself. A brief story appeared on the local news website in 2015, 2 years later. Not even a paragraph, really. Police in Savannah are looking into allegations of a group enticing women by pretending to be religious recruiters. No arrests, no names. However, I knew the neighborhood they were referring about. It was the location of the address. When I read it, a chill went through me. It wasn't only me. It was authentic. I occasionally try to think about what would have occurred if I had followed her to that meeting. If Evan hadn't arrived, or if she hadn't backed off. I believe concerning the women who didn't have a suitable companion, and I'm scared of it. Her smile, the way she howled, despite my refusal, her eyes remained composed, as if she already knew she was getting what she wanted. As if she already knew she was getting what she wanted.